Welcome everybody to the Clubroom. Super excited to be here. My name is Mark Moyer, and I have Jessica Mendoza here in the Clubroom. I just wanted to do a quick shameless self-promo. My book, Win Again, is a fantastic job search and business elevation book for anybody looking to, whether it's your shift gears, transition from your sport to what's next, or even from business to business, whatever it is. There's all kinds of advice in there about how to network, how to build a team surrounding you, how to prepare for meetings, how to negotiate offers, all kinds of stuff. So I encourage you to grab a copy for sure if you have the opportunity. I'm super excited to have Jessica on board. I'm going to invite her in, and then while I'm inviting her in, I'm going to do the whole, a little bit of a quick bio that I put together for her. So Jessica, come on in. So basically, short version is Jessica was born and raised in Camarillo, California. Did I say that right? No, I know they say Camarillo, right? But anyways.
No, Camarillo, you're right.
It is Camarillo. Okay, great. And she played high school softball, obviously, and was a star there, but she also played high school hoops, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Attended Stanford, but not just attending Stanford, set all kinds of records there, but she also got her master's in science there, MS. That's impressive. I love that. Played for Team USA in 2 Olympics in 2004, won a damn cool gold medal. Those are always pretty cool to have in softball. And then in 2008 in Beijing, captured a silver medal there, played national pro fast pitch softball for a few years, and has been in television with ESPN for a long time, more recently with Sunday Night Baseball, also broadcasting games for the Dodgers, who are I think they're the newest low budget team in California now that San Diego's spending lots of money. Am I right? No comment. She has no comment
Low
whatsoever.
budget. For sure, they're in that category.
Anyways, but so that's enough of that. But look, I appreciate you being here. We don't have a ton of time, so I want to cover a fair amount of ground. And right off the bat, though, it's intriguing to me to see that you, you played obviously softball throughout school as you were growing up. But tell me a little bit about playing hoops. And was there ever a point where you said you'd consider following hoops versus softball?
Yeah, actually, that's why I tell my kids all the time, play as many sports, do as many things. I mean, it's not even about sports, but just put yourself out there. And
Yeah.
I think as your body, mind, everything changes, your passions change. But for me, basketball was my first passion. For sure, I thought that was the sport that was going to take me further. That's why actually I loved Stanford. It was Tara Vanderveer and Stanford Cardinal, their women's basketball program. She's still there. She's legendary for those that don't know her. But I remember Jennifer Azzi's poster basketball player at Stanford when I was growing up. And that was a huge influence. I just stopped growing at 5'9", so I was power forward, and I was always like tall, and then everyone else kept going. And that's one of the beautiful things about softball is that it doesn't have to have a certain body type or height requirement. You'll see all weeks, walk, shape, sizes, everything, playing that sport of softball and baseball, which is pretty cool. But for me, playing a bunch of different sports is what helped me, I think, be a great athlete. Kind of learning different parts of my body, understanding how I can be explosive in one way and how I can utilize that in another way.
That's a great answer. So what's the biggest thing you miss about playing hoops? Or do you still get out there at all? Or
Oh yeah, we got a hoop in our front yard, and as a family, we play all the time with my husband and boys, and we're always like just throwing elbows, and that's probably what I miss the most is the physicality of basketball. I think that's something that I didn't get in softball, and I think that's what I love being a power forward is being under the basket and just all the action and the fact that it's aggressive and physical and like you're gonna get beat up and bruises. And I think having my dad as a football coach, there was some part of me that just like craved that kind of action. But yeah, I would say that's the part I miss. It's just the physicality of it.
you should spend some time riding the New York City subways. I think you get the same kind of feeling.
Oh, I've spent plenty of time on the subways in New York City.
I think you need the same elbows for that. So I know that you wore the number 21, and I love the story behind it. But tell everyone why you picked number 21. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, Roberto Clemente was a huge influence really in my father's life, him talking about the importance of, we think about breaking barriers with Jackie Robinson being the first African-American baseball player, but then there was a huge influx of Hispanic players coming into the game, and Roberto Clemente was a huge part of that. And what he did, not only is obviously an athlete with the Pittsburgh Pirates and all of his accolades, this is well before I was born, but ultimately, even in death, the fact that he was all about others and giving. And I mean, Mark, a lot what you talked about, even with this club room, is, thinking about every day, like, how can I help the people in front of me? And for him, he died in a plane crash going to give and provide food and services to earthquake victims. And just knowing that was his entire life was about giving, was about literally other people, even though he was this big time baseball player and could have easily just been on a beach somewhere in the off season. Died way too young, but just knowing kind of what that number represents. There's actually, for anyone who is going through Pittsburgh, there's an amazing Roberto Clemente museum that his family has there. It's so beautiful, very unique, but it talks a lot about his life. But that's why I wore 21.
No, that's a great way to honor him. When I was a kid, I remember having his baseball card, and I did see that he passed away. But it's incredible to see how he landed at 3,000 hits even. Like he got to that, and I can't really quite figure out what's the bigger tragedy, that he passed away attaining it, or if he'd just been short of it or something. But that's something I always stuck in my mind. So that's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing that. So in terms of the Olympics, because this has always been something that, and I've got a quick little funny story in a second about that, but I think competing on the field and winning the gold medal was amazing, but I always like to hear a little bit more about the experience of being an Olympian itself versus being on a field. I mean, the field could be almost anywhere. Tell me what it was like to compete against people from different countries, and were you part of either of the ceremonies on the opening or the closing?
Yeah, I mean, to the first part of that, I think the Olympics is all about everything that happens outside the field.
Yeah.
To me, that's what really resonated was, living in the Olympic Village, 10,000 athletes, more nations represented than the United Nations. And to be able to have one giant cafeteria where you're all eating and breaking bread and sharing and understanding. So yes, you're competing against other countries, but ultimately you're getting to know athletes from all over the world. You're able to sit down with meals. That was one of my favorite things I remember in Athens, was going and sitting with the Iraqi soccer team.
Wow.
This is a year after we had invaded and declared war, and there was so much happening in that part of our country and part of the world and with our country. And I never would have been able to fly to Iraq and have conversations or dinner with people there. And yet to be able to sit down and share a meal and have deep conversations and really understand what it's like for them to be there, what it's like really for us to have grown up, and honestly, as a female, to have opportunities. It just encompasses so much more than sport. I know the Olympics, that's what I think, NBC, who has the games, always does a great job of letting everyone know, and you understand that, but experiencing it is something that allows you, that when you are on the field and you have USA across your chest, what that means, and what that represents, the people back home, but also the opportunities that we have in our country that others don't. And that was something that really hit home for me, especially my first Olympic Games. And really, when we were on that podium and the national anthem was being played and our flag was being raised.
And I mean, that's the one thing I always imagine, right? Is being on that podium, and I'm sure it's almost like when people talk about their own wedding, how it flies by and things fly by like really quickly. But what was going through your mind when the anthem was being played? I mean, do you remember?
It was a lot of emotion that came unexpectedly. I remember that think about, for all of us, how many times we've heard the national anthem, and it just hit me different. It has ever since. And it was that understanding background I gave you with, really being like a pride that, you always have for your country, but really understanding that And of course, you got your sisters you're standing with, Leah, who's in here now, your teammates that you've lived with, and honestly, like, gone through so much together. And that's, I think, what shocked me more than anything, is I thought I'd be like fist pumping, like, yeah, like we won. And then the national anthem is playing, the flag's being raised, and all of a sudden I'm in tears. And I'm not a big crier at all. And I was just like overcome with like every emotion you could feel.
Well, and that seems to be a common story, though. I think that people are like, oh, the bravado, and then they get up there, and suddenly it's like, oh shit, and everybody. It's what it is. It's a culmination of. I mean, you've reached the sort of the top of the mountain, and I think it's just like, oh my God, like you just release everything. It's just you've worked so hard to get to that point that now you're there. I'm sure it's just you know, my quick little fairly dumb story is that my mother was born and raised in Egypt, of all places. And so my scheme when I was a kid, when I was like a teenager and stuff, was I wanted to be in the Olympics as the sole representative for Egyptian skiing team. I thought because I was a decent skier. So I was like, I know nobody else is skiing for Egypt. So I'm in, man, I'm in. But my parents told me to just kind of pipe down, but anyway, I always thought that'd be really cool to march into the, whatever stadium, carrying the Egyptian flag, even though,
Yeah.
whatever. Anyways,
Have they had an Egyptian skier? Has anyone been able
I
to
can't,
tell?
no, there's no way. So, so that was,
That
that
would
was,
have been that way.
that was my little scheme, but whatever. Anyways, but that's, it's always great to hear people's Olympic experience, because most people are like, yeah, I went there and I batted, 420 or 210 or whatever it was. I did this and that. And then you don't really hear about, well, just what you said, the Olympic Village, and, sitting next to the, Iraqi soccer team. It's incredible. So you played your softball, you got you won your medals, you played fast pitch and so forth, but the time comes where, I mean, what was the moment when you said, you know what, I just can't play anymore? Was it an injury? Was it just what was that your moment that you said, you know what, it's time?
Being pregnant with my second son, and to be honest, it wasn't even that pushed me. I knew I was going to take the year off, so it was more about, okay, am I going to come back? And at that point, I was evaluating, playing into Olympic Games. Softball was now out of the Olympic Games; it wasn't going to be in, which was heartbreaking. But knowing that, okay, this is not an Olympic sport, I was playing professionally, and I felt like I had done everything I could in the sport at that point. I had been able to experience so much, and travel the world, and even share it with my family. I was married at that point. My oldest son was then 3-4 years old, and my husband quit his job to travel, so that we could all be together. I mean, we were doing everything and experiencing everything, and I just felt like there wasn't anything left to do within the sport, and I could feel career already. I was already working at ESPN. I had been working there for, gosh, like 5 or 6 years at that point. So juggling both, I could just feel the career really pulling me. And to be honest, the highs I was getting within my career were also able to stimulate me in a way that I was like, I can transition into this and still get that same adrenaline. So it was actually a
Well,
lot
let me
easier.
ask you about that. Let me ask you about that, because you bring up a great point. We talked about it a little bit, a little while ago, but a lot of things that are missing from an athlete's life when they leave their sport is that adrenaline rush from competing, from being around teammates and so forth. Tell me a little bit about how you feel it's been replaced.
Pressure. To be honest, there's some sick part of me that craves that. Yeah, I loved my teammates, I loved competing, but there was something about, you have one moment in this time to get it right. There's no redo. There's no, shoot, can I get another one? Television's the same way. You're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, go. And there's no, oh shoot, pause. Like, can we? No, it's live. And there's very few things in life, I feel like, that you don't get an opportunity, that it is about, your heart is pumping, and it is about that moment. And if you don't succeed in that moment, you fail. And that to me really resonated. It's hard, but there's some part of me that I crave that pressure. And it's what allows like the work ethic on the front end that you put in for that moment that you're preparing for. And then that adrenaline rush of like knowing that you got to get it right one time.
Well, and I've certainly seen a ton of the segments you've done on TV, and I mean, you know your stuff. So it's funny because when the observer watches, they're like, they'll say, "Wow, Jessica really knows her stuff," talking about Alex Bregman or talking about Judge or whoever it is, right? But a lot of times we forget that the preparation that goes into it and how you need to really know your stuff. You need to do a lot of research. I think people don't understand the amount of work that goes in to before they do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tell me a little bit about how you need to and how you prepare for these segments when you are doing them, and even for your Dodger broadcasts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination. There's so much information now that it can get overwhelming, especially in baseball. There's so much statistics, so many, websites, and it's a lot. And so I find myself actually getting overwhelmed. I'll go down a rabbit hole of pitching, just find like slider depth on like and then finally I'm like, oh my gosh, no one's going to care about this in the broadcast. So
Yeah,
a lot of it's really, Mark, deciphering what matters. And
yeah,
it's not about me necessarily and my interests. It's about how is this going to entertain the viewer? So I want to give them information. As a color analyst, my job is the how and the why. So the play-by-play, who I'm sitting next to, I think a lot of people don't know this. There's two, sometimes three people in a booth, and the play-by-play is the one telling you the what. 3-2 count, runner at second base, Alex Bregman's up to bat. My job as a color analyst is when Alex Bregman rips a double in the left center field gap, is to tell you how and why that happened. And do it in a way where you want to watch, you're interested, and also getting information. So my preparation is thinking a lot about, who's watching, what would be really cool, because I think this is awesome, but how can I make this with our production, our technology, entertaining for the viewer? And so that's part of it. And then there's also just, the humanization. So like sitting down with Alex Bregman and talking shop about, gosh, anything, him being a dad, him, what did he do in this off season? Yes, we're talking about his swing, but like maybe there's some tweaks he was making because something happened, an injury, just humanizing, making him a real person instead of just this like object of a hitter that we're trying to talk about.
that's perfect because it's a lot of what I like to talk about here is sort of a little bit less of the athlete's career and what they've done on the field or a rink or a court or whatever it is, and more so the what happens behind the scenes, because we don't see that at all. I mean, you'll see it on 30 by 30, whatever it is, or et cetera, but
Yeah.
you usually see. I mean, we don't know what Aaron Judge does for the other, whatever it is, hours. We don't know that he goes to the. Actually, I have no idea what he does. So there you go.
Well,
But
he had him on last week, and it was great because everyone knows Aaron Judge, 62 home runs, like
right,
obviously the beast that he is. But we had him mic'd up, and this is what the beauty of spring training. And we were doing a talk back live while he was in right field,
yeah,
and going down this like conversation about like favorite show. He's talking about Looney Tunes, and he's talking about Bugs Bunny, how much he loved Bugs Bunny. It was just so like fun. But then he's like, God, I hate Daffy Duck. Like, just was so mad about like how much. And you could just see all of a sudden, like 9-year-old Aaron Judge came out. He forgot he was on a field. And he's like, I mean, he's always bugging Bugs. Always. He's always getting it. Like, he was getting so fired up. And if that's the kind of stuff, like, yeah, we could ask him, like, what makes your swing so good? And I know people
mm,
want to hear that too. But really, like, who is he? And he's a giant child. Like, he's a beautiful human. And honestly, he's a lot like you and me,
yeah,
watching a
yeah.
cartoon and going, darn that Daffy Duck, like, leave
That's
Bugs
awesome.
alone.
That's awesome. It's funny. I did see an interview with one of the other young guys on the Yanks, and he was what's his name, Oswald, and just talking about how it's so refreshing to hear some of these guys talk about how lucky they are and excited. Oh, and Jose Trevino last year at the All-Star game, where he was mic'd up behind the plate, and he kept on saying, "I can't believe I'm here," like pinch me kind of thing. And we usually think that a lot of these guys are cocky and so whatever it is, but a lot of times they're like, "Can't, what the." like, do they even, what the hell's going on? It's amazing. I see that a lot also with hockey players, where a lot of times they're like, damn, I just love playing on the pond. Like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to play this sport. So it's always nice to see that side of the athletes and the sports. So that's cool. All right. So I have to ask, tell me a little bit about working with A-Rod. And, most people don't realize how much a student of the game he is. This guy is a walking encyclopedia of the sport. But tell me what it's like with your experience sitting next to him and doing a game with him.
It's exactly. I mean, he has so much knowledge. I think for being a superstar and a celebrity and all the things that he is, I think what gets hidden, and I think part of it is like sometimes he hides that, is that he's a baseball nerd. And
Yeah.
when I say nerd, like I went to Stanford, like Nerd Nation is like that's our flag that we wave. It's like it's a huge compliment. And he is someone that just, you can understand what made him great. There was physical talents, but the knowledge and understanding, the way he can see things, the way he dives into it, the questions that he asks players when he's around them. I think, that was something that I knew, but I didn't really understand until you're sitting next to someone for hours and hours and days and days. And I mean, you're around them so much, you start to understand their tendencies. And he really, wants to be great. And he also has a deep understanding of baseball. And I think sometimes in the celebrity, you almost lose that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see him and the J-Lo thing and all kinds of other stuff, but they don't see that he's also a very active investor and very active, business person too. And he's a pretty smart guy. And I just think people see some of the other stuff that's gone on. I mean, I guess sometimes that's hard to escape. But so you've done something that we've done a few things I'd love to do, but one of them is, and I'm very jealous about this, is throwing out the first pitch. And I did see some video of you doing that up in Seattle. Tell me about, did you practice it? Did you whatever it, or did you just go up there and heave it? Or tell me a little bit about what led to that too. I mean, it was in Seattle, why and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite one was actually Dodgers when I was 9 months pregnant. I was literally like going to give birth any day. That one was my favorite just because I think being a female, being pregnant, they set up a little mini rubber, like 10 feet from home plate. And I was like, you gotta be kidding. So I walked out to the mound and like everyone was like, and I like full wind up, like freaking heaved that ball, and the place just went nuts. And there was just something like I was so like proud to not only be a woman, to be a pregnant, like you couldn't get more feminine like I was in that moment. And so that felt really good, just because I was so mad that they set up this like little kids like I think it was like a little pink like rubber, like here you go, sweetie, you can go throw from here, just toss it. It'll be fine. We don't want you to get hurt. And I was like,
But by the way, they do that for all these, like I see a lot of old timers and like or stuff that they do
I
that
know, but
for.
exactly, old
It's like,
timers. I was like,
yeah,
okay, come on, like
I know, right.
I don't care. 9 months pregnant, like don't matter. Like day after I give birth, give me a ball. Like I mean, this is our profession. We did this for like in our entire life. Seattle was special too because my kids were older. That was more. I think this was last year, and
Yeah.
That was special because they were down on the field. My, sons are 9 and 13 years old. And so having them there and we live in the Pacific Northwest. So my youngest is a huge Mariners fan. So being down on the field in Seattle, seeing their mom, and they did like this whole video thing. And I don't talk to them at all about my career. So they're always like, wait, you did that? Wait, that's right. Did they Photoshop you into this? Like,
That's
that's not
great.
my mom. Like what, And so that's fun just to include them and maybe remind them every now and then. Like I know I'm just mom, but mom did do a few things. So maybe listen every now and then.
Well, I guess that's the beauty of Google nowadays, right? But it's funny that you say that because I think most kids, they just have this, they don't even know what their parents do, like and so that's awesome. You had that experience, and it seemed like I didn't see the whole thing, but it seemed like you were bringing some heat, if you ask me.
You have to. Like I don't know. I do feel that pressure. It's funny. I get nervous because I'm like, oh, I want to like throw that. Like I want to throw it not like super hard because I'm in tennis shoes too, and I know me like total dork. I would like be like I'm gonna throw this thing as hard as I can, and then like slip, fall, like roll over.
Oh,
break
jeez.
my ankle, like being like die
Why is
hard,
she on
like
crutches? Oh, it was a
game
tough
6
first
of the World
pitch. Yeah.
Series. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, that's great. Now, I did notice I did a little nosing around on Instagram and stuff. I'll admit it, and I did see that you spent some time in Seville.
Yeah,
Um, my daughter had spent a semester there, and so we had the opportunity to go there. Incredible. I mean, it's funny, we don't here in the US, we tend to be a little very US centric, and we don't pay attention often to what's going on out there. Spain's an incredible country, and there's so many amazing things that we saw there. But to me, the riding the train, we went from Madrid to Sevilla, and it took 2.5 hours. This thing is going 180 miles an hour, 300 and something kilometers an hour. And it's the smoothest thing ever. And I'm thinking, why don't we have this here in the US? What's going on?
right?
And Seville, this church was built in 1238, and here we are getting excited about something that's 200 years old, and they've got this cathedral that's whatever 700-800 years old. It's like, damn,
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
What was your experience like there?
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, we it was special. It was right before the season. It was actually during the lockout last year, and so I was
Hmm.
nervous because I was like, "Shoot, am I going to be able to go?" And obviously, coming off of COVID, like
Yeah.
I've been able to travel through sport for so long that I want to share that with my family. But we had amazing friends that we were with, and it was such a special trip. And I had never been to. We went to Portugal and Spain, and I had never been to any of those parts at all. And Sevilla was super special. I think just walking around, the flamenco dancing,
Yeah.
beautiful buildings like you touched on, but really just sharing it with family and being able to experience different food and cultures and exposing them to that is one of the most important things that I want to try to do as a mom.
Well, yeah,
Is
your boys are at that perfect age too, where they're hopefully like sponges a little bit, and they really are impressed with what they see around them.
yeah, well, I think the language too is, just getting outside of your bubble and just my favorite thing to do would be to sit at a cafe or a restaurant and being very Spanish and like having a 11 p.m. dinner and just watching
Right.
the people,
Yeah.
walking by and not feeling like you have to rush and be like, oh, I got to get to this thing and that thing. And actually really just soaking in the atmosphere and the people. And especially going during like an off season. We were just in January in Italy teaching softball and baseball clinics there with my Olympic coach. And that is like my favorite time to go to Italy is actually in the winter because it's just locals, and you
Yeah.
can kind of feel like that's what you are.
That's perfect. Before we go any further, just real quickly, if you have any questions, stick them in the Q&A section over there on the right, in that little chat box there, and we'll get to a couple of them. I know that Jessica has to roll in a few minutes, but if you've got a quick question, that'd be great. One comment to make to you, Jessica, if you are in New York City, bring your uniform and stuff, because I'm the captain of my softball team. We could use some help. Just I'm throwing it out there. I'm just saying, we could use an outfielder or two, and some of the guys think they're pretty good, but I wouldn't mind bringing an Olympian along. That'd be pretty damn funny.
That
So
would be
just
amazing.
just showing up like you got your bag. Hey guys, what's up? And they'll be like,
Yeah,
"What's she doing here?" Like,
yeah.
"Oh, you'll see."
Who brought the
Yeah,
chick?
exactly. Oh, that'd be awesome. So I know we haven't had a lot of time in here and so forth, but what do you think of this platform, and what do you think? I mean, have you seen something like this before? What are your impressions of it?
I mean, I love because I'm definitely someone that would love to bop around like room to room. So I love in the beginning, like where I was waiting, and it's like you're kicking it. My friend Leah, teammate, Olympic teammate, we're all just like kicking in a room. We can chat. You can, all right, let's go over to this room, like talk to these people. And I think nowadays, because we do so much more, obviously digitally and online, to
Yeah,
make it as much like we were in person as possible is important because it is about more about the connection versus we have our stages and are able to talk, but to kind of just like kick it on a virtual couch and be like, hey, what's up? What do you do?
that's great.
Is unique.
Awesome. Well, listen, what we'll do now is I'd love to jump back to the tables actually, and just give you a chance to just for a few minutes, because I know you got to run soon, but a few minutes just to say hello to a few folks. So we're going to jump back to that in a sec, but I truly appreciate you being on here, Jessica. I know that you're very busy. There's lots of things going on. we're all gearing up for a fantastic baseball season, and it's I know you spent some time in spring training. That's got to be a blast. So thanks for being here. Appreciate it, and always always good to connect with other Olympians and hearing their stories. And I almost mentioned the Egypt thing again. Anyways, I won't do that, though, promise. But thanks again for being here, Jessica. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.